Well, welcome back. We are doing this kind of looser format where we are trying to half remember an absolutely vast road trip that we took along Western Turkey. Hence, usually I try and make sure that I'm a little better researched on some of the historical sites, but in this case, I'm underprepared.
Yeah, don't look at me, Dave.
We are having to sort of zip through all these very quickly anyway because we covered an incredible amount, and I'm trying to keep these episodes down to a sort of trim 20 minutes. So yeah, pardon that this isn't the best, most authoritative version on any of the historic sites. We mainly just wanted to talk about our trip, and I am, of course, here with Sean.
It's true.
So, obviously watch the last episode if you haven't done that yet. We had made our way all the way north. We pretty much covered virtually the entire width north to south, having started in Bodrum, in sort of the bottom, the sort of southwest corner, kind of heading up to eventually at Çanakkale, kind of in the northwest corner. You know, only Istanbul and the European part of Turkey is more sort of north and west.
Yep.
So yeah, a fair distance involved. The town of Çanakkale itself was okay. Do you kind of remember it at all?
I think I remember drinking a lot there. But yeah, I remember it being charming. I do seem to remember now a statue of the Trojan horse. Is that right?
This is the funny thing.
Is that the place?
It is. We had just kind of like a night to kind of relax there because, you know, it'd been a lot of driving. In the morning, I got up early and headed to the waterfront, and basically the prop that they used in the film of Troy is just there by the waterfront. Now, of course, this is it's just, you know, a prop that was made. I mean, of course, the historicity of the Legends of Troy, goodness knows we don't have time to unpack all of that, but just as a thing to photograph and film, and of course because of the enduring interest in the legends surrounding Troy, I can't lie that this was a huge plus to catch this.
Yeah, it was an unexpected delight.
We're getting to the actual historical ruins of Troy in a bit, but I was very glad that this was something I could also film. In fairness, the site of Troy itself is fairly remote. I'll just be honest here. I might get shouted at for this. In this kind of particular part of Turkey, before you kind of get all the way to Istanbul, there's not a tremendous amount for, you know, visitors. When we were in Çanakkale, you could see just loads and loads of stuff around Troy, because obviously that's a huge draw for people there. The other thing was some various history. I guess it must get for the Gallipoli campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Even though that was the opposite side of the water, this is kind of the largest city in the area, so I guess they had lots of sort of materials around town for that as well. Other than that, I mean, considering the extraordinary riches of sort of ancient ruins that we saw everywhere else along this west coast, in this top bit, there's actually not a lot going on as far as that's concerned.
Indeed.
But as I said at the end of last episode, just getting to see the ruins of Troy itself was more than enough to kind of draw us a long way out of our way to catch this.
And they had a great museum there, didn't they? It looked as though it were the product of the Borg.
Giant
square building.
Extraordinarily futuristic and I think quite recently completed museum just about a kilometre down the road from Troy. Well, first of all, the ruins themselves. Suffice to say, this sits somewhere in the middle. Of course, most of the sort of famous parts of Troy are from the Bronze Age, though, and again, you'll have to be paying quite close attention. It's not the most user-friendly for someone who's not prepared to look into the historical side of it, because really they sort of split Troy into about 10 phases.
Yeah, there was a lot of detail about that in the signage. A lot of archaeological detail about all the layers and strata for representing various periods.
And so you have like sort of level 1 being the earliest. Just in case I embarrass myself by getting this wrong, I am simply going to flash up the correct level, which, you know, would sort of believe would be about contemporary with when the Trojan epics might be describing. The sort of best bets of around the sort of just a little before the Bronze Age collapse. It's something like at least 4 layers in, and there was a bunch of subsequent layers built on top because this is kind of the nature of the site. Like you had ruins, and then ruins are built, like new structures are built on top of that. They get ruined, and then stuff's built on top.
Why do they build ruins?
That's still one of my favourite jokes. It's like, if the Romans were so great, why did they build so many ruins? The thing about the site of Troy, a lot of the places we've been, pillars have been re-stood up, arches have been sort of re-pointed, and various things which add sort of verticality, makes you look up.
Yeah.
Wow. And of course there's a lot of Roman and ancient Greek sites like that. Now, Troy doesn't have that so much. Sections of the wall stand at an impressive height. I was certainly just super excited to be there. Again, we tried to get there first thing in the morning, but difficult to say. Again, for people who've seen the film, where the city seems to resemble something closer to a sort of almost like a medieval castle. While undoubtedly Bronze Age Troy would have been much more impressive than it is currently. I don't know how how your friends and relatives who are not so much into history would get on with this. I feel like a bit of disappointment might be in order. You can imagine little kids not being too enthralled. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I think they'd probably enjoy the museum more, because there were some wonderful artifacts there, some very shiny ones.
Yeah, maybe. So, look, somewhere in the middle. I was absolutely loving this, and again, as one of the things that I've wanted to see for a long time, I was so pleased that we managed to kind of cover this vast distance and actually get to see this. For other people, your mileage may vary. I don't know. There's quite a lot to see. Again, the verticality of quite a lot of elements of it are, it's quite impressive. I don't know. I leave it to you. You can see the footage here. You could have a great day here, or maybe you'll be a little bit disappointed. Somewhere there.
Yeah, it depends how archaeologically minded you are, I suppose.
I guess so. So, again, having a quick jaunt around the museum, we were then starting to sort of retrace our journey south. And yeah, it was a long way. We just briefly stopped at this overlook. Do you remember this?
I do not remember this specifically. Maybe.
It was a cafe, it's a little roadside restaurant, which had this beautiful view down this sort of south-facing coast, kind of on this sort of long straight bit that you hit after you kind of come around the corner from where
I think I can picture it actually. It's just kind of on the edge of a slope.
Yeah, we just briefly stopped there and had sort of like a selection of Turkish breakfast items, which is, it's quite nice, just nice to get a breather. We then head round the corner. I think, I could be wrong about this, I think this beach is, I think I saw it called like Yolu Beach. We did stop off after, like a long hot drive to kind of actually get some time in the water. It was strangely, as you stepped into the water, rather than sandy, it was strangely muddy underfoot. Like, it was a bit unnerving. Like, what am I stepping on here?
Yeah. Was it weedy? There's plenty of seaweed.
I don't recall exactly, but anyway, just nice to cool off and get a bit of a breather. We ventured a little bit further south and eventually got back to Bergamo. Now, we mentioned this in the last episode. This was ancient Pergamon. We'd already visited the considerable ruins that's sort of up on the Acropolis on the sort of raised part, but there's also a lot to see kind of at the same level as the modern city, including this. Do you recall this?
I do, yeah, I do. It was the only red brick place we saw, really.
Yeah, this is the funny thing. We tend to picture the ancient world as being exclusively all sort of white marble and columns. And so when we see kind of Roman structures built out of red brick, it kind of throws us like, wait, what is this? What was this built in like the 1800s? What's going on? This is the Temple of Serapis. Again, I'm worried I'm going to get some details wrong. I'm going to get told off. I believe this is an Egyptian deity, right. But this is mostly definitely built by the Romans. And just the size of this place, the fact that it's surviving, about 6 or more stories tall.
Very tall, yeah.
Again, if this was, talking about the whole red brick thing, if you built this as a modern like leisure centre, people would be like, well, steady on. Like, it's big for a modern building, but for an ancient building, and the fact that it still survives at this height is ridiculous.
It's incredible.
So, yeah, again, a really unique place.
They were very thick walls, considering.
Yeah. Funny, I've forgotten about this, because it was so hot at this point. You can see the exposure on the camera. I normally have a problem, like, when I'm filming stuff in, like, the heat of the day, the sun reflects off, either the bricks or the stones, and it kind of makes them all, kind of washes the colour out, makes them all very bright. But, yeah, so that was really great to see. We also just briefly caught this massive tumulus.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Again, you don't normally associate this with Turkey, but yeah, they have huge mounds like these, and this particular one is kind of in the heart of Bergamo. Unfortunately, a little bit of rubbish in there nowadays, like not very well kept, and there's like a sort of grill stopping you going like right into the middle of it. But still, it was nice to catch. So we got to our accommodation in a nice enough hotel. Nothing all that special, really. We had a comparatively low-key evening. Now, I'm curious if you remember this or not. Do you remember ordering something particular when we got to the centre of Bergamo? We went to a burger restaurant, which was unbelievably inexpensive and really, really good.
It was great. It was a very modern place.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it felt like the most kind of American-esque place we visited.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to flash up some other footage because I don't think I was kind of giving myself a night off.
Is this the place where I ordered a Churchill?
This is now. Bear in mind, none of us knew what this was kind of going in. Do you want to explain it for everyone?
Well, I just saw it on the menu as an option to drink a Churchill, and yeah, I thought, because I didn't know what it was, that I had to order it. And,
Now, see, that's not normally my response to drinks orders. Like, ooh, the mystery drink. Ooh, I must have. But, so how was the Churchill? Did you...
Well, it was kind of just like brine, really.
Yeah. So, Sean, would you care to tell us what is in a Churchill?
I think the point of it is supposed to be like an electrolyte kind of restorative. You know how modern days, you have an electrolyte kind of sports drink, and it
I mean, it's not really my scene, but sure.
Helps to hydrate you.
So what was in it?
But this seems very un-Churchill. I mean, Churchill would sooner have had a brandy.
Well, I'm going to say he's just on the brandy
exactly.
and cigars all day.
Why this is named after him, God knows. Maybe because Gallipoli, God knows. But anyway, so yeah, it tasted just like salt water as far as I remember.
Because it was what, soda water, salt. Was there something else in it?
I actually can't recall. But I remember it not being entirely that pleasant.
What I specifically remember is that after the waitress brought our drinks to the table, as you were trying this, I glanced over towards the sort of the kitchen where the door was, and there was like a couple of them peering around the door at us, almost kind of like, is he actually going to drink it? Let's see what happens. Come on. And
it makes me wonder, why did they put it on the menu if that's the reaction? I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
Obviously, no one buys it.
Sometimes I always used to puzzle whenever you saw like they made like if you're in Greece, sometimes they make a point of putting Nescafe on the menu,
right?
In places that serve perfectly lovely coffee.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing? Clearly, someone's like, what? I mean, you don't have a Nescafe? Well, unheard of. So they're kind of like, okay, fine, you weirdos. Here's some gross instant coffee that we've, used to mimic the conditions you have at home. You're welcome. So I don't know, maybe a few people have like, I can't believe I've come to a Turkish town and I couldn't just get a decent church. I mean, what is the world coming to?
That's the irony. I mean, I've never heard of it. Being a born and bred Brit, you'd expect to have found it by now.
Yeah. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's what they think the British are, with this weird, like, kind of stern, ascetic race who, rather than drinking actual nice things, just want to pour down like some bitter, salty water.
That's it.
Maybe that's the impression we give across. I don't know.
But yeah, the irony is that to get a Churchill, you have to. The closest Churchill is in Turkey.
Yeah, I've not seen it advertising.
As far as I know.
I'm guessing you're not going to be ordering that much in the future.
No, I don't think I'll repeat that.
Anyway, so that was just had a nice but quiet night in Bergamo. The next morning, again, I headed out very early. I allowed these boys to sleep in because I wanted to catch the ruins of... Now, this is the Asclepion of Pergamon. It's a really large sort of archaeological park, just a little bit outside of the town, but it definitely... Well, I think I walked about 45 minutes to get there, so not too bad. And apart from the theatre, which is probably one of the more striking things, just loads of incredible ruins there. I believe this was famous as an area for particularly people who had eye problems.
Oh, really?
Again, if I've got that wrong, I will just cut this from the episode. But I believe that's one of the, as a sort of medicinal kind of place, I believe this was one of the, was famous for that.
I can't recall.
Or I'm conflating it with another site. Anyway, I kept it kind of brief. I think I gave myself just over an hour there. Then Sean and Cal came and picked me up, and now we were heading... We'd done a fairly good job of catching the ruin sites, the main ones at least, that are about 30 miles from the Turkish coast. But we were now actually heading further inland because there are some pretty remarkable places. And again, I wasn't sure if this was something that would get cut for time, but my goodness, these were some of the best parts of the entire trip.
I'm glad we did.
Now, first of all, we got to... You remember this one?
Not so much, actually.
Sorry, but guys, you probably gathered from the last episode. If it seems puzzling that we're having this much trouble kind of like remembering the different parts of the trip, first of all, as you're seeing, by volume, we covered so much. A lot of it ruined.
Yep.
Ruins do somewhat kind of blur together after
true.
you've seen like 20 sites.
Especially with alien names.
But yeah, again, I'm not expecting the people... Because I'm writing big to-do lists for these trips, I've kind of got pins on a map, and of course I've got all the footage afterwards to kind of keep track of where everything is. It's fine for me. For everyone who comes on trips with us, that's a much taller order. So hence we're kind of doing this format of I'm curious to see how much Sean remembers, like if I jog his memory slightly.
Yeah, maybe keep jogging it. I mean, is there more
So this is Sardis.
I know the name.
It has some pretty incredible... I think there's for example, ruins of a synagogue there, which was quite remarkable. But this in particular is a sort of recreated portion of the baths there. And, it's interesting. I am a massive believer in these sort of recreated archaeology sites. I've made a point of going to every one I can go to in England, whether it's Butser Farm or just any place that has recreated archaeology. I think it's such a great way to get people to connect with history.
Yeah.
I think, if I may, I think sometimes there's a nervousness about creating a recreated structure because you have to make some solid assumptions which are based on some tenuous evidence.
Yeah.
All you've got is a footprint in the ground, and you have to extrapolate upwards. And so, it's very easy. You have to make some interpretive leaps, and it's very easy for someone to come along like, well, actually, I think you're wrong. But I'm such a believer in this sort of stuff, like creating, these recreated archaeological things, which is why something this huge, which again has such a wow factor, sure, there might be some small inaccuracies. With Roman stuff, we have, encircling the Mediterranean, we have enough architecture to make a pretty good go of it.
Oh,
now.
I do recall this now, yeah. I do.
And having things like this, you don't have to, this is actually sort of built pretty much in situ, like sort of on top of the ruins, but there seems no reason to me that more sites couldn't build this just like 100 yards away. You can obviously excavate the area, make sure you're not there's covered the archaeological footprint in the ground, or build it a kilometre down the road if it's a particularly sort of sensitive area archaeologically and you haven't been able to even but I don't know why there isn't more of this. There's ways to do this not as well. Most people look at what Arthur Evans did to Knossos, especially because he's pouring concrete on this Minoan site, and he was playing pretty fast and loose with the details. Most of his early assumptions about the Minoans are now highly spurious to the point of being almost farcical. But again, why you can't build a recreation of Knossos a couple of kilometres down the road, especially considering the visitor footfall the main site gets. I think there's more than an economic incentive to do this. Anyway, very long diatribe which I may cut down, but yeah, love this stuff when you have recreated archaeology and it gives you the sense of scale and the awe. Yeah, that was wonderful. And just down the road, now again a lot more ruined, I think this is a temple of Artemis. I can't remember to whom this temple was dedicated. Again, a pretty vast footprint. A couple of pillars stood back up to kind of give you an idea of scale. Yeah, pretty remarkable. Oh, and some much later, you can see some sort of Byzantine apse kind of at the far end, which is a bit unexpected. Quite remarkable sort of part of countryside there. You know, just looking out to the mountains.
Yeah.
And,
that's the wonderful thing about Turkey. You've got ancient history mixed with just the most wonderful natural beauty.
Yeah.
Mountains, forests, kind of arid terrain.
I mean, look, this episode is not sponsored. There's not going to be like an ad read at the end, like visit Turkey. But
no, but we ought to get paid a little bit in commission.
The whole, where do we even start? It's the whole place is just such a commercial for itself.
Yeah.
Like, Turkey is so easy to love as a location. As Sean mentioned, the opener to the last one, just the landscapes on their own are something else. Such a variety of mountains, forests, rivers, beaches, and then you throw in all of these. As I am always keen to point out, any just single one of these transplanted into England would instantly be the largest and most significant Roman or ancient site in the entire country, with very little competition. It would easily be the most significant site, and yet in Turkey they've got just so many. They don't know what to do with all of them.
I know. It's difficult to kind of superintend all of them. Yeah,
and so much as I have very much enjoyed zipping around England, kind of catching, for example, the various Roman sites we have here, the amount to see, it just blows your mind when you get to Turkey, and so much of it is still standing and at really impressive heights as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, we kept that one comparatively brief because Cal was waiting at a small cafe on the corner. And after a short coffee, we headed back on the road. Now, this was kind of nutty. I mentioned about these sort of vast roads traversing Turkey, and a lot of freight kind of being driven, up and down and everywhere. I presume you recall this incident.
Yeah, it was bizarre. I'd never seen anything like it.
The first thing we knew, there was a policeman standing in the road, not stopping traffic, but getting everyone to like really, really, really slow down. So we were like, okay. We could see a bit of red on the sat nav, but it wasn't really clear like what's going on here.
Yeah.
Eventually, and we saw the sort of queue up ahead, and like, here we go. So turns out the road was melting.
It's crazy.
I mean, this sounds like a punchline, but no, the road was melting. I think somewhere I've actually got. I think one of these clips I've got some audio of this. I'm going to cut this in here if I do.
It's strange. It's the combination of the sun beating down, in a very dry climate at the time, but you're kind of sliding as if you're driving on a wet surface.
Yeah. I think from what I recall, it was particularly happening because this was a slope. I think it was a slope up.
Yeah, that's it.
It increases the friction, and when you've got like, let's say, so many kind of like these freight lorries with massive tires, kind of. The friction then, combined with the sunshine,
it was,
turns the asphalt back into liquid.
Custard.
Yeah, that sound, it really just sounds like
licorice custard.
It's kind of. Do you remember the sound of like a paint roller?
Yeah,
kind of in a tray.
Yeah, that was it. And I was trying to navigate around these so as to avoid that, because I could see the tyres on adjacent vehicles caked in this.
Oh yeah, and you could feel these little pings of stuff kind of getting flicked up against. I was like, oh my goodness, we're in this hire car, this white hire car.
Yeah.
Like, how are we gonna? Is this going to be just like completely peppered, like we've been shot?
Yeah, indeed.
Or something.
That is just something you don't prepare for that morning. Oh yes, just gotta bear in mind that the road might melt. So, what to do in that scenario.
It's really like the floor is lava, but IRL.
Yeah.
Well, in fairness, I think the floor is lava IRL is known as Iceland, but
yes, indeed.
Still, I am very surprised and relieved to say that when we later sort of examined the car, like fearing the worst, Not a trace.
No, I was expecting...
No black specks, no damage to the paintwork from things being flipped like...
I know.
Nothing.
I was expecting kind of at least an inch kind of added to the diameter of each wheel because, you know, caked tarmac.
So, anyway, this did feel like a long drive. I can't remember, it might have been like 2.5 hours. It's quite a way inland.
Yep.
But I would contend more than worth it. We got to, this is, do you remember this one?
Yeah, I believe I do.
This was probably...
That might probably just take the crown, I think.
Yeah, it's really up there. This was probably the hottest day.
We didn't... Yeah, I felt like we didn't actually have enough time there, even though we did spend a long time.
So here's the thing.
So huge.
The ruins of Hieropolis, it's such a large site that they rent out golf carts just to get you around.
Yeah.
There's also several entrances. Now,
there's a bus that takes you back to the car park.
Oh, grief, yeah. I try and research these sites as much as I can before we get there, but there's a limited amount you can tell just from like Google Earth and trying to... So we parked up in what would be the western kind of car park, which turns out is at the end of this vast necropolis. You might be aware that Romans were very particular about burying their dead outside of the city. That was a particular religious observance. And there's just this... I mean, necropolis literally means city of the dead.
Yep.
Now, when there's, when what you can see nowadays is just a load of like burials in the ground, it's like, well, that's a bit fanciful. But here, there's all these structures. It really is like almost like an entire town just built of these like funerary structures.
It was crazy. And at this moment, we actually all kind of diverged and did our own thing. And I was wending my way around these little tombs, and when the sun did get too unbearable, I'd dip down into one and just, spend a minute there, and it's something incredible.
Yeah. Now I really regret being a little bit skinflint and not just hiring a golf cart.
Yeah, perhaps.
I seem to remember this was quite an expensive ticket to get in.
If this were just a single day, we could have spent a long time doing this and then ended up at the... there was some kind of water park.
Well, this is the funny thing. There's
you
also...
swim around the...
Yeah, a little bizarrely. There's a swimming pool with what appears to be sort of like faux marble ruins kind of dropped to the bottom, which is kind of fun, I guess. The kids dive down like, look at me, I'm swimming amongst my Roman ruins.
It must be the only place in the world where this is combined.
There's definitely some surviving Roman baths in Tunisia that we talked about.
There was a road, wasn't there? There's like a street.
Yes, so one of the more impressive parts, I'm going to flash up on screen the name of this particular gate because it escapes me, but again, this often appears on the covers of books and in various things. It's a pretty remarkable survivor as a Roman gate, and you can sort of see this avenue of columns. It's actually kind of comical that one of the most beautiful structures there is a public toilet, if I recall.
Oh, really?
You can stand there, philosopher, like, just think of the ancient hands that put this together. What their lives must have been like. What wonders they had. It's like, I'm going to stop you. You're looking at a public toilet, man. What can I tell you? As if all this wasn't enough, the unbelievable part of Hieropolis, which it's not prepared for, is the travertine. I'm not a geologist. My chemistry is not really there. What is this material exactly?
Well, I can't really tell you. I can tell you a few things. There's a lot of it in the Vatican and in Rome, and it's travertine tiles. They're kind of a very sought after commodity for posh Romanesque style interiors and bathrooms and so on.
Yeah. There's just this huge kind of...
As a raw material, I really don't know how it's formed. When I first saw them, I thought they were salt flats.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, looking at it, it does. But just the scale of it. I mean, it looks like there's snow. But
because it looks.
In the 40-degree heat, it's like I'm going to just rule it out right now. That's not happening. But yeah, and of course, then you have this water just cascading over it. Unsurprisingly and thankfully, you are prohibited from sort of walking out on that. But yeah, just this unbelievable, like sort of lunar landscape. Anyway, I will say, whenever my comment section says like, oh, you're not doing this properly, you're not taking long enough, I will say I regret that I didn't have the time to go and see the theatre. You can see from these shots, I saw it from afar, but the fact I didn't get to go and actually investigate it properly, I've since, seen views of it like, okay, that was a silly mistake. But yeah, the heat was near intolerable, and we did, again, Callum was just like waiting, and we didn't want to like keep him for hours and hours and hours, so we had to move on. And it was getting later in the afternoon as well, so if we hadn't left in time, we wouldn't have been able to see, already mentioned it, Laodicea. Now, while there's ruins at Hieropolis that are more impressive in terms of verticality, the site of Laodicea is huge. And by the way, this is still only, 5, maybe 7 miles down the road. Not much. Like, again, what I was saying about how much incredible Greek and Roman archaeology there is in modern-day Turkey. Just these whole vast sites, like square kilometres of just ruined colonnades and avenues and theatres, and like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And since, there's still work going on at Laodicea. I think quite recently they've cleared off, I want to say there's like a theatre or something else that they've been doing work on the edge of the site. So, like, we could go back to this and there'd be still more to see. Yeah, unbelievable. Loved this to bits. And thankfully, given that it was a bit later in the day, first of all, that it was still open.
Yep.
A number of episodes back, I was grouching about how Spanish archaeological sites have a really annoying habit of closing at 2 o'clock and not reopening to the following day.
Yes.
Meaning that if you have to drive somewhere, you're so limited on what you can do. This was open till at least like 7 or possibly 8 in the evening today, but so that was good.
Okay, so if you notice the change in audio quality about now, it's because it's the future, and while we are comfortably over the 30-minute mark, we are still at least a couple of days and several hundred miles short of the finish line as far as our episodes go. So all that remains to do is slice off a third episode from all of this. Probably should have seen that coming. So there's more to come. I know there's never a time when YouTube channels aren't asking you to like and subscribe, but we've unaccountably hit something of a nadir in views. All the latest episodes, which to my eyes at least seem indistinguishable in quality from the previous episodes that seem to have done well enough, are all stalling out at like a couple of hundred views. So it's a small thing, but dropping a comment really would make a huge difference. Also, as we've been discussing on these episodes, it can take a long time for our travels to make it into finished episodes. You can see a lot more of what we're up to on a day-to-day basis, both on our Twitter and Instagram. It'd be great if you could join us there. And finally, if you've enjoyed the music in the background, it's ours. We didn't get this out quite in time for the first episode, but the new EP that accompanies this episode is out now. If you want to support the channel, that is the best way to do it. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next episode.